So something of a feud has broken out between the business secretary in this government, Kemi Badenoch, and the actor David Tennant over trans rights. I'm just going to read out this piece from the Times. It's an interview, so it is frankly one-sided. It's an interview with Kemi Badenoch, but I think it's interesting. Um, and I think more broadly, Tennant's attitude is problematic. I think there is a misogyny in the trans lobby. So on this one, I sympathise with Kemi Badenoch. I think David Tennant's a misogynist. I mean, she's not pulling her punches. This is what she says. Um, Kemi Badenoch says the former Doctor Who actor plays the same game as Nigel Farage. She's also attacked Farage for for the racism and misogyny within Reform, notably over those obnoxious comments from Reform people this week on Rishi Sunak. Last week, David Tennant, the former Doctor Who actor, used an LGBT awards ceremony to launch an extraordinary attack on Kemi Badenoch over trans rights. Until we wake up and Kemi Badenoch doesn't exist anymore, I don't wish ill of her, I just wish her to shut up, he said in this acceptance speech. Well, it's a bit rich saying you don't wish ill of her, but you don't want her to exist. And actually, the very existence of biological women is part of the problem with the narrative here. Backstage, he went further, saying that his message to young trans people was that it's a tiny bunch of whinging little effers that are on the wrong side of history and they'll all go away soon. In an interview with the Times, the business secretary, who is also the Women and Equalities Minister, argues that Tennant's attack is rooted in misogyny. I do think David Tennant is a misogynist, she says. The way he framed those comments showed that he did not care about the argument on single-sex basis for women. Shut up is one of the tropes that you hear them say. There's something visceral there. I do think it's probably rooted in misogyny. It doesn't matter whether it's misogyny or not. It wouldn't be any better if it was directed against a man. And I'm grateful that she said that because it wouldn't. I mean, telling someone to just shut up is kind of obnoxious. You'll notice I don't even tell the people that I strongly disagree with to shut up. I believe in freedom of speech. Tennant, she says, does not know or understand her views. I've never said anything negative about trans people, she says. I've actually talked about protecting them from those who wish to exploit the rules that were made for them. They, people like Tennant, just don't care. They attack. They think it's all a big game. If you want to be a politician and stand for election, don't just get on stage somewhere and accept an award for being a celebrity ally. That's just a ridiculous award, and then use that platform to create problems. In some ways, it's incitement. It can encourage others to carry out harmful activities. These very wealthy celebrities don't think about that. They don't understand the world we all live in. They have bodyguards, they have all sorts of protections, whereas politicians are just like everyone else. Not entirely true there. High-ranking politicians will have some degree of security, particularly with what's happened in recent years. Tennant, she says, is a classic example of someone who lives in an echo chamber. She says they think they're on the side of the angels. They don't realise they're the baddies. Many women, many parents, many people are really concerned about what we see when gay children, in particular many of them on the autism spectrum, are being medicalised, effectively sterilised. That is a scandal. And I'm not going to read out the whole piece because of limited space here. But I agree with her. I think his statement was obnoxious. You know, he doesn't have to agree with her. But the problem is he's telling women to shut up who are concerned about this. This isn't just high-ranking politicians at Kemi Badenoch, it's nurses. It's women who take issue with, hospitals changing the language from expectant mothers to expectant people. There's very real issues here regarding freedom of conscience, regarding people being at risk of losing their jobs for speaking out on that. I think Tennant is obnoxious, and I think his attitude to this demonstrates the bullying, ugly nature of the trans lobby. Um, I mean, there's one side of this debate which is that trans people have a disproportionately high suicide rate. They're often used as a political football. Um, I do think there's a need for compassion, so I don't agree with kind of just mocking them. I have enormous compassion for people who are going through gender dysphoria, but at some point you have to say there is a common sense deficit here. Well, that's part of it, because the vast majority of people do believe that biology matters. But also, I find the trans lobby is very aggressive, pretty misogynistic. Their attempts to hound and vilify J.K. Rowling, for example, testifies to this. Um, Sometimes the debate's been handled badly when Rishi Sunak, used up time in Commons to attack Starmer when the mother of Breonna Gay was in Parliament. That was obviously bad optics. I do think there should be compassion for trans people. However, I draw a line at saying only their opinion counts, and narratives about biology, arguments about biology equate to bigotry. I think that is utterly obnoxious. It's disingenuous. Women have every right to have safe spaces for obvious reasons. Changing spaces, women's prisons. I spoke recently about women's prisons. I believe women who commit crime, violent crime, should go to prison, but I think they should be, at least have the biological security there that they're not going to be sharing a cell with someone who was biologically male. Um, there are very real issues here, and for a woke celebrity like David Tennant to just tell his opponents to shut up shows a sheer arrogance. Um, I agree with her. I think it is a bit misogynistic, and he's contradicting himself. He says he doesn't wish any ill of her, but he wishes she would disappear. Well, attitudes like his is all about basically disappearing women, disappearing the idea of a biological woman, i.e., a woman. Um, it's insane that in the general election debate this issue even has to be brought up. That you have candidates having to clarify their position on this. It's one area that I don't trust Labour on. I am concerned that they will push legislation on this sort of thing. That's why a supermajority isn't something to be welcomed. Labour's going to win this election, but we need a strong opposition to hold them to account on things like that. And I'll speak more about that on my analysis for the Labour Party. But I think Kemi Badenoch is absolutely right to raise this issue. Um, there is very real freedom of conscience issues here. There's issues about people's livelihood because they could risk their job over so-called hate crime. That's something we need to watch. I don't support bullying or mocking trans people. I think that's wrong. But it's insane that people are vilified as bigots simply for saying that biology does matter. Um, and I'm sick of woke bullies, holier than thou woke bullies like David Tennant, who think that because they're an ally, they get to just play holier than thou to everyone else. You're not a politician, David Tennant. You're entitled to your opinion, as we all are. But I think that should have just shut up or just vanish is utterly obnoxious. He could say, I disagree with Kemi Badenoch, but that traction that he took, I think, demonstrates what's obnoxious about a certain aspect of the trans lobby. And I think it'll only get more intense under the Labour government. So, yeah, let me know your thoughts. But on this one, I'm with Kemi Badenoch. Not on everything. She's a Tory. I'm not. But I think she's right about that. And I will say the Tories are the only major party that has, I mean, Reform, I guess you could argue, has, but the Tories are a party that has stood on the side of common sense. Labour, the Liberal Democrats, the SNP, the Greens have not